I'm Veronica.
And welcome back to Baphomet's Cozy Perch.
Hello.
I can already tell I'm going to do a lot of hitting my mic today. It's like really close to me. I hit it just by saying hi, so I'm going to have the spatial awareness here. All right, welcome to today's episode. Today we are talking about misunderstood demons.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to delve a little bit further into Baphomet. We know we went over who Baphomet was in our intro episode, but we're going to delve a little bit deeper into Baphomet, how he was kind of created,
Mm-hmm.
why, how has he become the super infamous image that we kind of all know as a demonic symbol today, you know, all of those good things. And then we are also going to talk about the demon Lilith.
Yes.
Who is very fascinating. This is my first time learning and researching about Lilith, so I found it very interesting. But why don't you go ahead and start, because you know a little bit more about her than I do.
Sure. Okay, yeah. Well, she's a very interesting lady. I first learned about her, I think, from the show Supernatural. She is a demon in Supernatural. She is a very powerful demon that is kind of known as the first demon, which is how I kind of got interested in her in general, because I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like the first demon. How does that work? And it turns out in a couple of different lores of Lilith that kind of rings true. But generally speaking, she first kind of comes in. There's a lot of lore about Lilith, and there are a lot of iterations of Lilith. So it's kind of, a pick and choose of what things really are true and or what stories are the most hard-hitting. But so we first hear about Lilith as any sort of entity, meaning the night in Sumerian myths, I think, where basically she embodies like this emotional and spiritual darkness, almost kind of like the wildness of the forest, and that's like literally it. That's pretty much all we know about her, just kind of like this wilderness spirit. So I feel like she keeps this kind of wild IDGAF mentality / vibe throughout all of the other iterations of her.
Yes.
That's like literally all she is. She's just like this wild wilderness spirit lady.
Yeah, she seems to be, there seems to be the common factors with her seem to be female, the first of some sort,
Yes.
first of something, every single time. Yeah. And then doesn't seem to follow protocol or follow rules or standards or whatever. Those are like the three that I noticed are consistent regardless of which iteration and which story you're looking into.
Right.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, how has she been translated, to kind of represent all of these things? How did that happen? It's very,
Yeah, especially across different cultures and tellings and religions and things. It's interesting that she kept so many similarities no matter where she was depicted.
Exactly.
Very fascinating.
Yeah, so it's like, perhaps this Lilith lady was just, that at her very base.
She was an alien. Do you guys watch Ancient Aliens? She was the original alien. Okay, anyway. Sorry.
So she keeps this kind of wild thing going for her. There are a couple still earlier texts that kind of just explain her as like a succubus, as a woman of spirit, an entity, a demon of sorts that pretty much just comes to torture men, especially in their sleep, and like arouse them and all of that, and a lot about fertility, which we'll get into a little bit later. But the biggest and most apparent story of Lilith comes from the Genesis, Genesis Rabbah, which is, I believe, from the Jewish religion, where this is where we hear about Adam and Eve. That's kind of where a lot of the stories come from. And Lilith was actually the first wife of Adam. She was just as Adam is made from the earth, so was she. So they were created equally, because in the story that, a lot of Christians probably know, Adam was made, he was the first ever man. And then, from, what was it? One of his ribs was made Eve. So like she came from him, but Lilith came from the earth just as Adam did. And, because he didn't treat her equally and wanted to be dominant to her, he wanted her to lie beneath him. He wanted to be the dominant one in the relationship, and she was like, "Nah, dude, we're made from the same stuff,
We
my bro."
equal.
And so that made them argue a lot, and that made them quarrel. And she ended up piecing out of Eden and was like, "Listen, I just want to be treated equally. I'm out." um, and so she leaves and goes to some cave and like uh continues to like birth her own children like the independent woman she is. I love that in mythology, like people just birth children all the time.
Mhm.
We don't know why, we don't know how, but like good for her. She birthed the kids. And an interesting part of this story that really does fascinate me is that uh, God asks three angels to go find her and bring her back. Now he's like, if she doesn't want to come, she doesn't want to come, and that's that. But let's try and get her back here. But don't do anything weird trying to get her back. If she says no, she says no. That's what God said.
Mhm.
But these three stupid, excuse me, these three angels were just like, okay. So they go, they're like, okay, so come with us or we're going to drown you. And I'm like, excuse me, that's not what God said.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Aren't you angels? I'm very confused right now.
Yeah. And
Right?
yeah, and she's like, well, no, I don't want to come, but like, don't kill me. And so in, as a compromise, they kill 100 of her children every day, and she just has to live with that. So in that particular story, basically, like, in for reparations, for vengeance of that, she weakened. Sorry, my door just opened on its own and I'm just like,
Mm.
ah!
Baphomet.
Hello.
He's like, "You're
um
talking about us?"
yeah, just a moment, sir. So in vengeance, she kind of weakens the children of man, the human children, for the first 8 days that they're born. So for men, and then the first 20 days that they're born for women. Babies are weakened because of Lilith, because 100 of her children are dying because she didn't want to go back, because she's an independent woman who don't need no Adam.
Well, and they kind of accused her of being like the reason for stillborns also, right? Like that was also the reason that we have stillborns or something.
Exactly. Yeah. So she's kind of the cause of all, uh infant tragedies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of annoying because really, yeah, she was just sticking up for herself like we're equal and if you don't want to treat me like that, like fine. And that whole problem isn't really her fault. It's the angel's fault. Like, I'm sorry. You couldn't have listened to God. Like God literally told you be nice. If she doesn't want to come, she doesn't have to come, but
Uh-huh.
try to persuade her. And instead they're like, let's threaten her.
Like,
Like, no, that's not what he said. He did not say threaten.
he said leave her be.
Yeah. Like, I don't I don't understand. And she does go back. She doesn't go back. She goes and like basically has a conversation with them
Mhm.
and they try to convince her to stay or whatever. And right? And she decides no, she decides she would rather be a demon than
Exactly.
continue with a marriage with him because he will not agree to let her be equal. And that's after the whole demon thing, I believe, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's like, "Nah, it's cool. I'll live as a demon instead. I'd rather be independent than like
Like,
live with
she would
you."
literally rather be a demon than be controlled by two men. And if that isn't saying something, then I don't know what is.
Well, and I find it interesting that like that type of independence and that type of personality
Mhm.
was then translated into female demon that causes harm.
Uh-huh. Like, come on. That is just the most male told story I've ever heard.
Right? Right? You're like, so what were we really trying to tell women with this story? Like, oh, don't disrespect your husbands and your fathers and don't go against them because you'll turn into a demon.
Yeah.
You'll be considered a demon if you do that. You'll be just like Lilith.
I know.
Like,
Just like Lilith. And she just wanted to be equal. Oh no. You'll want to be equal.
yeah. She wanted to lie on top too.
Yeah.
And you know what? Sometimes that's better. Men, you know, just saying.
So ladies, if you're doing the top stuff, just remember that you're just channeling Lilith, you know?
Yeah, you're channeling Lilith, and good for you.
Good for you, girl. Channel Lilith, girlfriend.
You know what? I may channel Lilith one day and just like adopt some kids and be by myself with kids and not ever have a guy.
Do what you
Screw them.
want. Yes. And I
Oh,
love that. And so that's like the major story that we hear about Lilith. That is also kind of a more in-depth version that we read from the alphabet of Ben Sira. So he kind of is the one that illustrates that like large particular story. But there's
right.
another kind of take on Lilith as well, a little bit later in time, from the Kabbalah. Lilith has like cosmic powers, and so there's what is like the divine presence, I guess God, as what you would probably be portraying in other religions,
Right.
but like the divine presence is kind of how it's described here, is Shekinah, I think Shekinah, um,
Yeah.
and she she is kind of like the more, as they've described, like chaotic counterpart, but the feminine version of God, you know? So
Mhm.
she is the female God, which happens to be more chaotic because why, why are female, and people wonder why men think that women are so fucking, or excuse me, are so gosh darn nuts. It's because it literally dates back so long that women are portrayed as like chaotic and, yeah, anyway.
Mhm.
um, so she is the counterpart of the Shekinah, and eventually they kind of like the male version kind
The
of,
Holy One.
yes, ends up kind of needing and wanting to go and do things with Lilith in this myth. Like sh her ideals and what she's doing makes more sense, and he's like, nah, wait, we need to do stuff like her. So she ends, even though she's this chaotic counterpart that, isn't the male god ends up needing her because she's doing things better. Like, come on. And I'm quoting this particular text exactly. It says, Lilith's sexual spiritual link with the divine will only end when the Messiah comes and the brokenness in the world is mended. So her chaoticness is really for the good because she will stop it when the world is mended. I'm just, yeah.
I really like prior to even the Jewish, I think,
Mhm.
accounts of Lilith. I since we were talking about her being independent and all of that and that men basically using that and trying to make it seem like a negative. She in the Babylonian texts is
Mhm.
it's the same type of thing. She's also like she's used as a negative temptation, like a negative thing. So what they say, how do you say the Babylonian
Talmud?
Talmud?
Yeah.
It says, "It is forbidden for a man to sleep alone in a house, lest Lilith get a hold of him, because she's going to fertilize herself with men's sperm and create demons." Which, first of all, is pretty damn cool, if you ask me. But second of all, is another, like, showing you again that men are basically using this female energy
Yeah.
as like a negative, and like I'm trying to collect my thoughts here to what it reminded me of when I was first reading about that. It basically reminds me of, because you know how back then a lot of times and still today men are kind of babied a little bit more in society. Mhm.
Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm. And it's seen for some reason as more okay if men stay home longer and don't like move out of the house right away, and if they
Mm.
don't get married until their older age, and all of these things. And it just seems to me like that's kind of what they're saying here. Like, men didn't want to be forced to live on their own and get their own shit together. So instead, they're like, oh, no, no, men can't be by themselves. If they're by themselves, this female demon will come and get herself pregnant and create little demons. So men have to be with like, they have to live with somebody else. So they either have to be home with their parents or they have to have a wife. Otherwise,
Yeah.
who knows what'll happen. And
Yeah.
you're like, really? Like, to me, it just seems like an excuse to not have to live by yourself and do your own thing. Like, okay.
Okay. But
Right?
seriously, yeah. I mean, and throughout this, except for like the wilderness, wild forest lady portion, she really is portrayed a lot as kind of like this underlying sexual being. And
Mm.
obviously, she's a demon. So, like, that in any of mythology like good? I don't know. But it's just interesting that she is one of these well-known, like, dark entities, when really she's just, portrayed as this overly sexualized lady who's like trying to get preggers by all these men, and or rebelling from men who are too overpowering and trying to keep her down. So it's like, is any of that like really
Bad?
bad? Okay, maybe
Right.
the murder of children, where like she's, because in some stuff she's like the stealer of children. There are portrayals of her like that, but does that come from the fear of the over sexuality of women?
Right. Well, and that stemmed from them murdering her children first.
Exactly.
I mean,
And continuously.
here, right, and here she is, like, minding her own business, birthing her own children, not doing anything to Adam, like, off on her own, and then they're
Mhm.
like, "We're gonna kill 100 your kids every day." Cool? Cool. Because you won't listen to these men and be controlled by them.
It's
So, I mean, you almost can't blame her for wanting the revenge of, like,
no.
killing. And she didn't even do revenge of, like, killing 100 babies per day of humans. She literally just, like, made them weak.
Mhm.
So she didn't even give, like, tit for tat,
No.
you know?
Yeah. It's like they got a chance. They just got to get out of their, 8 to 20-day trial period, which, once again, the ladies have the 20-day period. It's just men being like, "Oh, you're weak."
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But and like reading all of the different iterations of Lilith just makes me mad at how men have viewed women throughout the entirety of
Yeah.
religions in general.
Right, like, we're talking Sumer and Babylonia, which are some of the earliest texts that we have. Like, those are
Mm,
some of the earliest civilizations that we have a lot of histories and texts for.
mhm.
All, like, and already we're seeing this.
Yeah.
And it surprises me that it always, like, men have, since the dawn of time, have used women as the excuse for why they do sexual shit.
Mhm.
Like, it's the women's fault. The women are the demons. The women are the one drawing them in. The women are doing this. Like, no. Can y'all just take accountability for your own sexual actions? Because that's what's really happening here.
Yeah, no one's
Like,
possessing you. You're just horny.
yeah, yeah, right? Like, it is interesting to me that that's what, right? Like, that's what they were like. If I'm in my room by myself, I get overcome with this feeling. It must be a female demon that wants my sperm. I can't do anything about it. I'm just laying in bed and I get these thoughts,
I
and you're like,
know. She was even blamed for like nighttime emissions of, like men,
like, uh-huh.
like wet dreams. I'm just gonna say it. Wet dreams. I'm not a guy, but I
This
know those.
podcast is not for those younger than 18
No. But
without parent consent,
well, I mean, yeah, that's something that males go
but it's
through.
true.
And
It's true.
it was blamed on like succubi. and especially Lilith coming into their dreams, and it's just like, or that's just the male anatomy.
Yeah. Like, it's just crazy to me. Well, and the crazier thing, here's the thing. I can understand back in ancient cultures where they didn't know as much, there wasn't as much research, we didn't have as much technology.
Mhm.
Fine. Half the reason we have a lot of religions in the world, do not at me for saying this, is because people needed a reason to explain things that were happening in the world that they didn't know how to explain.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of where religion is birthed from, like figuring out why things are the way they are, and, and making yourselves feel better for, like, well, if things happen, there are consequences and things like that. Like, religion is kind of birthed from that, right? Humans needing to figure out why things are the way they are.
And
I
needing
get it.
meaning. Yeah.
Right, needing meaning and stuff like that. So I get why in ancient cultures that would have been a thing, that maybe that is what they thought, because they would have correlated it to the only thing they knew. They see a really pretty woman, they get turned on. Why are they getting turned on in the middle of the night when there is no woman? Clearly something's happening. They think it's a demon, right? And I get that that's a thing in ancient culture. The thing that makes me angry is that because of those initial thoughts and things, men have just continued to hold on to that idea and just manifest it in different ways and use different words and whatever, but
Mhm.
have continued to think that way and use that as an excuse for things to now,
I
when
know.
you're like, we know, we have research, we know why things happen. There's literally no reason to blame women for any of that stuff anymore, or to believe that it's anything other than your hormones doing what they're doing naturally. And yet, somehow, even today, we still have men that use these same excuses.
I
It's
know.
just crazy.
I
It's
know.
just crazy.
Like, we science so hard for what? For what did we science, apparently?
you know? But yeah, it does make me sad that she's considered a demon, and that all these traits that she have has are considered demon traits, like evil,
Yeah.
when I don't know that I think she is. I
No.
don't think
I
she's
mean, at the
evil.
base of it, I don't think there's enough lore for me to be like, "Oh, yeah, she was definitely the one stealing babies and, trying to seduce men in their sleep." There's literally, like, only 2 little blips about that, and then there's this huge one about her being the first wife of Adam, and it's
Mhm.
just like, which one I know I'm coming from a female perspective, but, like, which one is more believable? You know? Which
Yeah.
one seems like what actually happened? So,
Yeah.
is she in the wrong? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm much more inclined to believe, given, again, things that happen even today, I'm much more inclined to believe that she was a very independent woman who didn't want to be controlled,
Mhm,
and that the man was like, "You know what? F you. I'm going to tell everyone you're a demon and that you're a horrible person and you did all these horrible things to me, and then everyone's going to hate you."
mhm.
And cuz you know what? That's still going on today.
That's right.
So, I think that she, yeah, was just independent and she just didn't want to be controlled, and he, couldn't handle that. That
Yeah.
wasn't okay. But I do find it interesting that God was okay with it. Like, he wanted to get her back. Like, he was like, I mean, I'd really like if she came back to Adam, but he specifically was like, don't force her. I mean, if she doesn't want to, which, can we start making that a thing? Can we start circulating that? Like, you know what your God actually said? Let's go back to the original Genesis and look, and the fact that your God actually said, ask her if she wants to come back. Ask being the operative word here. Ask her if she'd like to come back. Don't force her. If she doesn't want to, that's fine, but ask her.
He literally said, "Ask for consent." He literally said, "Ask for consent," and the 3 angels were like, "Nah, we're gonna threaten
Yeah,
her instead." It's incredible how, like, those little pieces of information just go over people's head, and they just take what they want and decide based off of how it works for them, and when really, she was just as equal as Adam. She was born from the same earth as Adam. Like,
Yes.
was she made to be a companion of Adam? Maybe. But they came from the same place, you know?
With the same purpose. I
Yeah.
mean, their purpose was to populate the earth. That's the same, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that clearly shows that God knew from the beginning that Adam couldn't do it alone. It had
Exactly.
to be
There
a man
needs
and a
to
woman.
be, yeah, that duality, those two. And it goes to show that God, that the God explained in that literature was not someone who was like, all women must obey me no matter what. It was, I'm putting you on this place to make your decisions, and I'm going to respect that, but I'd like for you to do the things that, I've put you on earth to do.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to kill you if you don't. And
Yeah.
he gave him the
Yeah.
free will.
Yeah, it was his, angels that ruined that. And that goes to show you that like even angels are prone to
Faults?
mistakes, fault.
Mistakes?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we can even go into whether or not the angels were
I think
good
that
or
would be a
evil.
very
Hmm.
interesting episode. If you guys wanna hear more about
Hmm.
angels, there are some very interesting angel stories that I've come to find where I'm like, "Huh."
Interesting. Oh, yeah. Um but yeah, so I agree. I don't think that I find Lilith evil at all. So if we go back to pop culture now, so we've
Mhm.
done like the history portion of it, and you mentioned how you first heard about her in Supernatural,
Right,
and
yeah.
she was considered the mother of demons, the first demon,
Yeah, and
right?
she is kind of leading this army of demons out of trying to retake over the earth.
Mm,
And so she's kind of the leader, other than Sam Winchester is trying, they want him to be the leader, but anyway, there's this rivalry, but she is like this ancient, a very powerful female demon who likes to kind of take on female figures, whether it be like little girls or powerful female statures. Um, and that's kind of her role. But she is known as the first. I think her backstory in that is she was the first human that was tempted by Lucifer, and thus became the
mm.
first demon, and
Right, right,
then
right.
became the demon mother that way.
Yeah. And so then I find it interesting because as we've talked about the history,
Hmm.
and clearly to us, she doesn't seem evil,
Hmm.
but then all of her iterations in pop culture
Hmm.
today are evil,
Yep.
right? So that's what she is in Supernatural. And then
Hmm.
you've got her in True Blood as the first vampire,
Yeah,
right?
I don't remember if she really is a popular or sorry, a prominent character, but I do remember them being referenced, at Lilith referenced as the first vampire, and Adam and Eve were created to feed her.
Yeah, which is interesting
I
because
know.
it does kind of coincide with the fact that, like, in the Jewish tradition, right, there's two Genesis. She's the original wife, and then Eve is made after that.
Mhm,
So it is very interesting. But then on top of that, she's in Lucifer, right, as the mother of demons.
mhm,
She's in the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, where she's kind of merged with the character of like Satan,
mm,
Madam
mhm,
Satan.
mhm,
And so I found that interesting too. So that is kind of seems to be a little bit of like they clearly did their research a little bit and at least enough to know that like her characteristic is that she wanted to be equal, that she
mhm.
wanted um but yeah, I mean in all of those she's portrayed as like a Satan evil character.
Yeah,
Like very evil.
kind of
And
synonymous with the devil.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um because I find it interesting. I once we started researching this and I saw that she gets referenced with vampires multiple times. I don't think it's
Yeah.
just in Vampire Diaries.
No.
I like right away got excited. I was like, "Oh, did I miss it? Was she in Buffy somewhere?" Like cuz come on, I mean Buffy is all about the demons and mostly vampires.
That's
So she is portrayed apparently in the comics, not in the original show. She's not part of the show. But in the comics, her name is Lilith, and she is a demon. She is portrayed. She is an ally, though, of Angel, who's a good vampire,
Right.
right? We know that Angel has a soul. Um, and one of her quotes from it is, "I know everything, the scent of angels, the sound of the trumpet that birthed the world, the taste of the first apple in the garden." Very interesting.
Uh-huh.
And it says in the show, Lilith was an ancient creature, considered the mother of demons, an ally of angels. She favored him due to the importance she gave to redemption. So she actually liked that he was a demon that was trying to redeem himself.
Mm-hmm.
So she actually cast protection over his house. So nothing born from her could harm him inside of his home. That did not include mankind because
Mm-hmm.
she did not birth mankind. Um, Angel asked what he owed her because of that. And she mentioned that she finds it irritating when she's portrayed as a white woman on television, and then offers him direction and tells him how he can avenge everybody, the creature that he needs to defeat to avenge people, and all of that.
Interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. So yeah, so she's depicted as a shapeshifter. She can shapeshift, she can show her demonic form or not. And she could cast protection spells from demons. So she could protect people from the demons that she birthed.
That makes sense. If she's the mama.
Interesting. So, okay, so that's kind of a fun version of her. I
Mm-hmm.
like that they made her a little bit more good. That's the first one I've read that's actually like showing her in a positive light. She likes redemption
Mm-hmm.
and she's willing to protect someone who's trying to redeem themselves from her own creations, her own demons that she's created.
Which
That's
feels
very
that
fascinating.
feels on brand with the Lilith that we've historically read about.
Right. Right. It's definitely on brand with the idea of her only being chaotic until the Messiah comes and
Yeah.
sets the world right.
Yeah, the Kabbalah version. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So very fascinating.
Yeah, super
I'm glad I
extra.
looked that up.
Yes. Yes. And just a final punctuation of
Mm.
Lilith. I found out that she's often used now as a sigil for a lot of feminist groups
Oh.
because of the nature of which we've learned about her independence. So feminist groups, especially in I think maybe the Middle East, I could be wrong, but just
Mm.
all over the place are use Lilith kind of as their symbol because of what she represents in female independence and kind of breaking away
That's
from the
so
patriarchy.
cool.
And I'm just like, oh hell yeah.
I'm looking it up because I've never seen like the resist. Oh, I see it. Interesting. Very cool. I
Mhm.
like that they use her as their. Oh, there's a article here that says the real Lilith, the first feminist.
That's right.
Well, very cool. So yeah, so I think yeah, we can conclude our discussion on Lilith with saying that I'm putting her actually pretty far over to the good spectrum.
Yeah, I think she's pretty cool. So I agree.
Yeah. I mean, she's done some problematic things, but haven't we all?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So, I'm down. I'm down for her being used as a symbol of female resistance. I'm cool with that.
Absolutely. Lilith for
Down.
the win.
Lilith for the win. All right, cool. Well, then we will move on to Baphomet, the man of the hour.
We love a Baphomet.
Couldn't even wait for his time, had to start opening your door because he was so excited that we were talking about him.
I know. It's just kind of weird that happens because normally my door kind of shifts with the wind from outside when I have my
Hmm.
windows open, but I don't have my windows open right now.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
yeah.
So, yeah, so we've talked about Baphomet before.
Hmm.
So, as a recount overview of what we've discussed before, if you guys haven't listened to our intro podcast, Baphomet is kind of the demon of balance, and he well, we had this whole discussion of not calling him he. Baphomet, they, them, are neither female nor male. They have genitalia of both. They're often depicted with kind of a male body, but with boobs They usually have boobs. But also, they are neither human nor animal. They're
Mm-hmm.
depicted as both. So, a human body with an animal head. And they are, yeah, supposed to, that's the whole point, is that they're kind of not one thing or another. They are an equal mix of everything. They
Mm-hmm.
bring balance to the world, etc. They were the first known depictions are with the Knights Templar, right?
It's
We
just
find them.
honestly the first mention of Baphomet is with the Knights Templar. It was the first
Yeah.
ever was written in a letter between, I believe, knights, perhaps, and they mentioned that they sometimes worshipped Baphomet. Some people think that perhaps it was just a different writing for Mahomet or like Mahomet,
Hmm.
which was they thought a different way of saying Muhammad, which would have been, their the right person to be worshiping at that time.
Right.
uh, Even yes, and the Knights Templar were a Catholic military group. That was during kind of like the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition kind of a time, in like the 1080s, very early, a long time ago.
Yeah.
So
Quite a while.
it would have been very bad for them if they had been found out to be worshiping some other type of deity, which some believe they were worshiping after torturing people. Some admitted to worshiping somebody called Baphomet.
You said you had a few articles that you had pulled up on
Mm-hmm.
Baphomet.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go through those?
Sure. Um, so that's pretty much the lore of how we first hear about Baphomet. There's not really like a sigil or a visual with Baphomet at that time. So we
Mm.
just kind of hear about him being worshipped. We don't really know. I'm going to say him because it rolls off my tongue easier
Yeah,
than that.
no, it's fine.
But we don't really get the sense of knowing exactly who or what and exactly what that means if one is worshiping them. Just that it was probably bad because the Templar were Catholic and should have been worshiping God.
Yeah.
So that was a no for them. Baphomet, on the other hand, later in time was drawn out to be, let me get the name. I believe it was Eliphas Levi or Levy. My American accent says Levi. I don't know which one it is, but they have kind of a more the more not infamous, but the more well known version of Baphomet. This was in 1857 that they kind of illustrated Baphomet as uh, a symbolic, like just pretty much more of a symbol of universal, oh my god, balance. Thank you. Wow. I could
Balance.
not think of the word balance. Universal balance. And from the article I'm going to read, it says, this is from Catalyst magazine, says that Levi sketches Baphomet out in a solemn detail and poise that the goat on his front piece carries a sign of the pentagram on the forehead with one point at the top, a symbol of light, his two hands forming the sign of hereticism, meaning as above, so below. The one pointing up to the white of the moon of Chesed, the other pointing down to the black of Geburah. This sign expresses the perfect harmony of mercy within justice. So it's very much just the symbol among occultists, which I mean sometimes does include Satanism just because it's not a known or very well, it's not a religion that people, glorify worshiping.
Hmm.
Occult really just meaning anything to do with kind of having magic and religion put together. So this wasn't when it was put in the Satanist church. It's not when it was like given the symbol of Satanism yet. Um, but so he's just giving Baphomet this all universal justice and balance and cohesiveness, a symbol of everything working together. That's
Hmm.
really what they were going for when Alpheus Levi, what a name, uh, created this version of Baphomet. So that's where you get the symbol that you just described, the boobs and the goat head and the wings. It's just all of that. So the depiction that we're talking about right now is known as the sabbatic goat. That's what
Mhm.
we're talking about. Baphomet, the picture of Baphomet as the sabbatic goat. Later, and what I found the most shocking was that the sabbatic goat depiction was not brought into the Church of Satan kind of as a demonic figure until the 1960s. Baphomet was
Hmm.
just a symbol of being balanced and the leveling of the universe until 1960s.
Yeah.
Which is just which just makes sense, you know? It just makes sense. So that's when they put the inverted pentagram on his chest, and that's when they eliminated the boobies because they didn't want the gender identity of Baphomet to be a big controversy within bringing them into the Satanistic church.
Mm.
So they eliminated the chest and uh, just made it a regular male looking figure. So that's why it's aligned with Satanism, is because in the 1960s the church was like, ah, okay, well this is ours now and we're gonna make it ours. Was it ever actually theirs to begin with? No, they just took a figure that they knew from, you know, the occult, a very famous occultist, and brought it in to make it Satanistic. And if we know anything about Satanism, it's that it's not all like blood and sacrifice and uh you know, evil intentions. It's really just living your life for you as opposed to living your life under God. And
Mm.
also a lot to do with being with the earth. But I'm not, Mom, I don't worship Satan. I just like to learn about religions. So it's just very interesting how all of that came to be, you know, from maybe Muhammad to this pentagram goat looking figure that everybody thinks is again synonymous with the devil, just kind of like
Yeah.
the more androgynous version of Lilith almost.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting that they basically made snap judgments based off of the look of Baphomet,
Hmm.
but it's like, you look back on ancient civilizations and gods throughout time are depicted as half human.
Hmm.
Like it's a fairly normal thing to be depicted as half human, and many gods in a lot of cultures were also depicted as a gender neutral figure,
Hmm.
both female and male. I mean, that's something that was fairly common actually for a lot of different cultures. So the fact that they just decided one day that that meant evil, even though all of the symbols, when you actually break them down and look into the background of it, they're all for, like we said, he's there for balance. They're all symbols that go coincide with that.
Exactly.
But for whatever reason, people don't like what they don't know,
Yep.
and they see something and they just attach whatever meaning they want to it, and then now all of a sudden he's looked at as this horrible demon, and it's like, but
Yeah.
that's
And
not what he is.
to jump off of what you just said, that reminded me of something I read earlier, where the horned look that, you know, we all fear so much, or society fears so much, you know, that kind of very iconic devil look that Baphomet does
Mm-hmm.
have. It's They said that it's a striking resemblance to other horned deities like Rome's Bacchus, Greece's Pan, Egyptians Hathor, and Celtic polytheism's Cernunnos. So like a
Mm.
lot of different pagan gods have the same look, and were they taken to the extremes that Baphomet, who doesn't even have like particular lore, there's no the story
Right
of
there.
Baphomet.
Right, yeah, there's no
And
background.
yeah, so like all these folks who probably do have some sort of like good or evil or teaching story, you know, those weren't taken and made the satanic symbol. It was just because they, you know, they probably agreed with some of what it represented and wanted to take it and bring it to what they wanted to use it for. Because there was no backstory for Baphomet. He's literally just a symbol boy.
Mm-hmm. We don't even, like you said with the Knights Templar, we don't even know that that's what they were actually talking about. So how do we even know? I mean, for all we know, that's a mistranslation,
Mm-hmm.
and then he was never even really a thing. So
So
yeah,
yeah.
I find it funny. I think there was a story though that I didn't talk about last time when we talked about Baphomet, and because it just didn't really go with anything that we were talking about. We were just doing the intro. This satanic temple in Detroit created a bronze monument of Baphomet with 2 children staring up at him.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a symbol I was finding a lot when we decided to name the podcast what we did, and I was looking for like pictures of Baphomet that I wanted to possibly use.
Mm-hmm.
I was finding this picture of, this is how I stumbled across this article. I was finding this picture of Baphomet with kids looking up at him, and I was like, what is this about? Apparently it originates from this, or so this satanic temple says, that they were the original creators of this like specific image of kids looking up at him.
Mm-hmm.
But it's basically Baphomet with 2 children staring up at them. It's a really large, impressive bronze monument. And they did like a whole unveiling ceremony. Over 700 people gathered, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a political message to it. They didn't just make this statue just to make it.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, there was this huge monument, this 6-foot marble slab engraved with the 10 Commandments that was allowed to be, it was controversially situated on the grounds of the Oklahoma State Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what this satanic temple was trying to say was like, if the Christians could have something on public property, then why couldn't they?
Mm-hmm.
And the state didn't agree and was trying to reject the Satanic Temple's petition to place a Baphomet statue on legislative property as well. So yeah, they did finally rule that the 10 Commandment monument violated state constitution.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, but in the meantime, before that happened, this satanic temple decided, the pastor decided, like, well, forget it then, we'll just erect our own statue right in our own thing, and we'll make it this giant, so he described the unveiling of the statue as a welcome home party for evil.
Oh, I love alternative religions really just doing stuff. I love that, man.
And then of course, like a Catholic activism group tried to, speak out against the statue and stuff, but they had put it on their own property, so they can't say anything about it because it's on their own property.
It's
but
honestly...
basically, it all started because they had allowed them to put this religious statue on legislative property, which anybody who knows our Constitution, there is a separation of church and state. We are not supposed to put the two of them together, and we could go into a whole thing about money, but we're just gonna anyway. So the point is that they wanted to put this, they were like, well, if the Catholic Church can put up a giant 10 Commandments statue on legislative property, then other religions should also be represented. It shouldn't just be one religion. We're a nation that encourages all religions, and there is no one national religion, there's no one national language. And so they wanted to put up their statue, and they were rejected, and they were like, that's not cool. We're going to build a big one and put it in our front yard and F all of you people.
That's right.
And I don't know, it just made me laugh. And they said they chose the depiction. They purposefully chose the more satanic depiction. And it says that in there. They purposefully chose, knowing that that wasn't necessarily the only depiction they could go for. They purposefully chose the more satanic depiction. Because of what they were basically trying to say.
Really sticking it to them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just thought it was funny. And I didn't bring it up last time, so I had to bring up that article at least this time, because it just made me laugh so hard last time when I was researching everything. And it just didn't fit with anything we were talking about last time. So
yeah. Well, I'm glad you did. I love that. And just like I said, I love when alternative religions really just put their middle finger up and and give nothing against the Christian, the Christian community. I'm sure there are a lot of good people that are involved in the Christian community, but it's just fun when other religions have a sense of humor. It's fun when Christianity has a sense of humor. So I do enjoy that.
Right. And in, like I said, in this country, we have freedom of religion. And the whole point is that everybody should be able to equally celebrate and practice their religions.
Mhm.
And so I like when other religions stand up for their rights to practice and everything like that,
Exactly.
and challenge a little bit of the status quo.
Agreed. And I think that is a great way to circle around and just kind of wrap up both Lilith and Baphomet because they're both symbols
I didn't
of
even plan that.
I know of breaking away perhaps from what religion was put onto you and kind of or what rules were put onto you and breaking and being a part of whatever it is that you want to do, especially Lilith, but
Hmm.
Baphomet and just Baphomet's journey through the
Hmm.
iterations of how people see and think of him. So
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to kind of wrap them up because I don't when we decided and when we were researching, I didn't really think this conversation would end up being like, are they good or evil? It's really just kind of an exploration of how deities that people commonly know about and may even fear are things that are just not known. They're just not well researched. People just don't know about them. So, are they good
Right.
or
You're
bad?
hearing kind of snap judgments and decisions that were made based off of things rather than actual researched histories, you know?
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's interesting to look through them and show that, like, just because you have seen it used a specific way doesn't mean that that is what it was originally intended
Mhm.
for, or
Exactly.
the whole story behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, are they good or evil? Probably, especially Baphomet. He's just neither. He's just the balance of everything. And
Right. He
Lilith is
literally is neutral.
yeah, he's so neutral. He is neutrality. He is everything and nothing. He is light and dark. He is happiness and sadness. I love it. And he's amazing, which is why he sits on my desk. And Lilith is just a badass, so
I think Lily thinks that we're talking about her because I keep saying Lilith.
oh no.
And sometimes I call her Lilith. So she's like, what? That's her when she's in trouble name.
Oh no.
Lilith? Oh, I'm just kidding. You're not in trouble. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But yeah, I think that's a great way to close it out. I think you're right. I think the whole point is that, like, just because something has been portrayed as being evil
Mhm.
in recent history
Mhm.
doesn't mean that that was the original intention, or that that's the actual history behind it. That's, so sometimes it's
Exactly.
fun to actually research and delve deep into things and find out the original meanings, the original stories behind everything,
Yeah.
because it can give you a new perspective on stuff.
Yeah, and it can I mean, if you're afraid of these things, it can make you less concerned.
Less, right, less afraid of it. Yeah. I think the point here is, do your research, friends.
Yes, do your
Research
research.
everything. We have such great tools in the world today to be able to research anything you want.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know, personally, just who I am as a person, you kind of said this too, is I just love researching things. I love learning about everything.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm one side or another. Doesn't mean it's fascinating to know more. And I like to know the truth about things, you know?
Exactly.
Um, as I've said before, as I teach my kids whenever I'm a princess at parties, there are always more than one side to anything, and you need to know all sides to know what's true. So
Exactly.
we're just here giving you more sides to things that you thought you knew.
Exactly. Perspective.
Perspective. So, all right, cool. Well, I think that was a really interesting conversation.
Absolutely.
And I'm kind of looking forward to we've been doing a lot of modern pop culture.
Mhm.
So I think I'm looking forward to doing more historical mythology,
Mhm.
because that's really where I just get so genuinely excited. Not that I don't for modern pop culture also, but
Yeah.
um, I love being able to research mythology and folklore and things like that, and religions. I also would like to pose before we close out this podcast that we're getting close to October.
Yeah.
I mean, technically we're still in beginning of September, but let's be honest, this year has flown by.
Yeah.
So we're getting really close to October. So I'm thinking for October we do a whole month, which is 4 episodes for us, of Halloween themed podcasts. What do you
I'm
think?
down. I'm down. Let's do it.
Yeah. So I'm thinking October will be Halloween themed podcast month. And we will talk about, maybe we'll save all of our talks about like witches and All Hallows Eve and things like that. We'll save all that for October, and we'll do a whole month of Halloween themed episodes. So if you, as the listeners, have a specific Halloween themed topic that you think would be great for the month of October, please let us know by commenting or emailing us, and we will try to include it in our Halloween fest, Oktoberfest, whatever we want to call it.
Oktoberfest. We'll bring beer.
There you go. Except I'm not really a beer drinker.
Me neither.
Ah,
I'll bring root beer.
dang. There you go. Does ginger beer count? I love ginger beer.
Yes, it counts. Absolutely. It has beer in its name.
All right. Hard cider. I could do hard cider.
Cute.
Could have hard cider. Anyway, so yeah, so I think that's what we'll do for October. I think that'll be fun. And then we're getting into months of holidays in general. So if October goes well, look out for more holiday themed months and or weeks maybe, where we will discuss more holiday related things that have to do with mythology and pop culture and good and evil and all of that. Because trust me, especially when we get to Christmas, we got some stories that we can go over. There are some interesting characters that are like with Christmas that have some interesting backgrounds.
Yes.
So I'm excited.
Me too.
So anyway, all right, cool. Well, then we will close out this podcast for today. Thanks again for listening and tuning back in with us. We hope to see you next week. I am Caitlin.
I'm still Veronica.
And thanks for listening, guys. Bye.
Bye. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.